Hello, this is Mrs. Porter. We are reading This Is Not a Drill, and we are on Chapter 5, Emery. It starts on page 43. I watched the hallway through the open door while I helped Natalie with the word search. Stutz was watching too. He flexes his shoulders, and when he stretches his neck, the tattooed lizard claws give me the creeps. Had Mrs. Campbell met Patrick's dad before? Did she know he was unstable? Good job, cutie pie, I say to Juanita, who holds up her paper from across the aisle. She beams at me. Am I a cutie pie too? Natalie asks, pouting. Most definitely, I tell her, and she nods happily. A kid in a navy blue jacket walks past the door but doesn't look in. He's the only person I've seen go past. I slide my cell phone out of my pocket, barely moving. Simon cuts his eyes over to me and I shake my head at him to keep quiet. I'm holding it under the desktop, deciding who to text for help when Stutz looks up. There's no way he saw me. I was really careful. But he apparently had the same idea at the same time I did. All you kids, put your hands on top of the tables where I can see them. 36 little hands flattened on top of the desks. How many of you've got cell phones? Goodness. Alicia's and Nick's hands go up. I look at Jake and he raises his. I raise mine reluctantly. Lying to a man with a gun in a room full of children seems like a bad idea. The kids look petrified. I barely have time to think about how weird it is that first graders have cell phones. Hand them over. Nobody's calling mommy. He collects the phones and dumps them onto the table where Patrick's sitting. Where's yours, Teach? He asks Mrs. Campbell. My phone is broken, she says evenly. I dropped it yesterday. You better not be lying to me. Mr. Stutz, would you like to search my bag? She reaches under her desk for her purse and holds it out to him. Looking him calmly in the eye, he drops his eyes first. Forget it, he mumbles. Alicia's waving her hand in the back of the room. Yes, Alicia? Mrs. Campbell, I can't find Tree anywhere on here. Just skip to one of the others, Alicia. You don't have to do them in order. It's the first time I've heard her sound impatient, ever. Kenji erases and erases, hard enough to tear a hole in the paper. Lewis slides out of his seat and begins crawling on the floor towards the fish tank again, but Jake stops him and sends him back. The buzz of a leaf blower drifts across the room, an undercurrent to the hum of the mini fridge in the back. It seems odd for birds to sing and butterflies to float past when 18 children are being held at gunpoint by a lunatic. I feel paralyzed and helpless. Tab says I'm not good at making decisions because my mom's always made them for me. Mom's the queen of passive-aggressive parenting. Her favorite is the rhetorical question. Is that what you're wearing today? She'll ask on my way out the door to school. It's hard to move forward when someone second guesses everything you do. She always wants to know everything about every aspect of my life, and she loves to call my friends' moms to share gossip. She's had plenty to say about my relationship with Jake. She liked him at first, but she made it clear she didn't think it would last. Doesn't it bother you the way he flirts with other girls? She asked after telling me she saw him at the mall talking to Callie Edwards. She knew very well they used to go out. She watched my reaction like a cat playing with a mouse. I only recently have been able to admit to myself that mean might be her natural disposition. It's almost like hurting other people somehow evens the score for the time she's been hurt. I love her, she's my mom, but sometimes I don't like her. That's just Jake, Mom. He's friendly to everyone. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she got to me. And Callie works there. Of course, I immediately called Molly in a panic to see if she'd heard anything about Jake getting back with Callie again. She hadn't. My mother loves mind games, and she can sniff out your weak spot like a drug dog. I used to believe all the things she said about my dad. She made me think he didn't love us and didn't want to be with us. Only recently I realized that maybe he left because she tried to control him too. I called him once last year when I started figuring things out, but she caught me and didn't speak to me for a week. And it was really awkward talking to him when we've lost so many years. She'd made it so difficult for us to have any kind of relationship. Sometimes I feel like all I'll ever have is a few fuzzy memories. Dancing with both feet on his shoes. Being lifted up in his strong arms in my pajamas to watch the 4th of July fireworks. Wearing the mittens he made from socks so I wouldn't scratch my chicken pox. And sometimes when he'd come home from work really late, he'd wake me up and we'd sneak into the kitchen and eat ice cream. He always made me promise not to tell Mom, but he said he was missing me and wanted to see me. We'd giggle while we washed the bowls to hide the evidence, and then we'd tiptoe back to bed. I've saved the images of my father like pretty shells collected on a beach. I keep them mostly locked away, but every now and then, late at night, I take them out. They always make me cry. Sometimes I wonder if I'll be bad at relationships too. Simon raises his hand and catches my eye. I stand up to go help him and feel my blood pressure shoot up. My head feels light and my hands are shaking. I can't let this kid see I'm having trouble. I have to hold it together for them. Before I was diagnosed with POTS, before I knew what postural or static tachycardia syndrome meant, I didn't know what was happening to me. When I started high school, I had these spells where I was sure I was having a heart attack. I got to stand up and my vision would be dim, my heart would race, and I would fight to keep from passing out. After it passed, I was always so drained and exhausted. Mom thought it was some kind of teenage hypochondria, but by 10th grade, things were worse, so she started taking me to doctors. At first, no one could find anything wrong, and after trips to 3 different doctors, even I started to think it really was all in my head. Finally, thank God, Dr. Blackwood diagnosed me with POTS. It turned out 1 in 100 teens have post-trural tachycardia syndrome, but most doctors have never heard of it. It's this malfunction in your autonomic system and the system that controls involuntary stuff like breathing and heartbeat. What happens is that sometimes when I stand up, instead of my heartbeat speeding up just a little to adjust to the change in gravity, it goes all haywire and shoots up to 130 beats a minute. So I get lightheaded and I have to sit back down. Some people faint, but I've always been able to ride it out, although it makes me feel awful when it happens. When Dr. Blackwood showed me how my blood pressure spiked when I stood up, I cried because I was so happy to finally know what was wrong with me. I knew I could deal with it if I knew what it was. Doctors don't know what causes POTS. Some people get it after an illness like mono or some trauma like a car wreck, but I hadn't had either. Since so many high schoolers get it, some doctors think it could be growing a lot in a short time. POTS is complicated, so I don't tell many people about it. It's worse in the mornings when I get out of bed and at night if I stand up too fast from lying on the couch. At school, I'm able to hide it, probably because I'm sitting instead of lying down, so it's not as severe when I stand up. I told Molly because I tell Molly everything. She's always so sweet and understanding. I wound up having to tell Tab because she got all mad when I didn't want to hang out because I was tired. With POTS, it's like you're running in place all the time, so you're worn out sometimes just from taking a shower or walking to your car after school. Tab acted like she understood, but then still got all bent out of shape anytime I wouldn't do something with her. I didn't tell Jake when we first started going out. I hated how it made me feel like some kind of Southern Belle stereotype, feeling faint all the time. When I did get up the nerve to tell him, he wanted to know everything about it, and I noticed he was careful to keep me talking on the phone so late after he knew, or not to keep me talking on the phone so late after he knew. The good thing is, for most people, pot goes away after a few years. And it's pretty easy to treat with meds. I take beta blockers, drink a lot of water, and get 8 hours of sleep every night. Well, most nights. And I have way less trouble than I used to, up until now. The worst part is that anxiety is a trigger. Dr. Blackwood said to try to keep a slow pace and avoid stress. Right? Stutz, who is definitely raising my stress level, watches the kids, then walks to look out in the hallway, his hand in his pocket with the gun. Patrick, you be ready when I tell you. You hear me? Stutz says. Patrick nods. What are you looking at? He yells at Jake, making all of us jump practically out of his skin. Jake holds up his hands. I can tell he's fighting to stay calm. Nothing, man. All you. Quit staring at me, he snarls at the kids. Dear God, I'm thinking, they're just babies and they're scared. How can they not look at him when he's holding a gun and taking their friend away? If he didn't want people to look at him, he shouldn't have gone stark raving mad in front of 18 kids. The kids pretended to be absorbed in their work except for Alicia, who really is, her head bent low over her paper, one of her yellow butterfly barrettes coming loose. I walk over and reposition it, careful not to look at Stutz. There you go, Buttercup, I whisper. That's better. She rewards me with a half smile. I love the way you're working so quietly, Miss Campbell says to the kids. She has this way of turning criticism into positive statements, Instead of, you didn't raise your hand, she'll say, I like to listen to people who raise their hands. Instead of clean off your desk, it's everyone with a clean desk can line up for our bathroom break. She does such fun stuff with them, it makes me wish we could stay all day. One morning, the whole room smelled like shaving cream because the kids had squirted on their desks to write sight words with their fingers. Kids are hardly ever absent in Miss Campbell's class because they know they'll miss something good. They respond to her now as she circulates among them, straightening Natalie's sweater and smoothing down Simon's bedhead hair. Her touch is magic. They seem to have forgotten there's a crazy man in the room. I watch her, without any clue that within just a few moments, these kids' lives will be in our hands after Jake carries the limp body of their teacher out of the room. All right, we end at chapter 5 on page 51.